Busy, busy night. All right, Honda's getting a free ad. I don't know why. Busy night tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We'll be looking at flood watches across the lower Mississippi Valley, along with severe weather. We've got some snow going on up in New England. We've got some snow winding down up in the Dakotas. And we have the endless winter storm in the Southwest, which, by the way, will be coming out and moving into the Northeast come Friday. We'll talk about that in the long range right here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island as they get ready for spring. Meteorological spring begins today. They've got mulch, topsoil, sand, and just in case we get one more snowfall, they also have salt. 631-756-1125, the phone number, the best prices anywhere, and the website is
OmniTrueValue.com. Joe.
yeah. I just forgot my usual video switch here, so let's do that now. While the watches and warnings map is up, but we will come back to that momentarily. Okie doke. So that's done. And here's Joe Rayo, everybody. Looking fabulous as always. Is that flannel?
Yes, it is.
It's fabulous.
And
it's fabulous.
It's very, very comfortable.
Oh, I love flannel.
Yes.
I love flannel. Even on down here where your mornings are cold, because it was 42 this morning, and it warmed up quickly. I don't know if I got to 80 today. I did the last time I looked at the thermometer around midday. I was at 76, so I might have gotten close to 80 degrees today. Maybe in town they did, but it was a really warm day, fair amount of sunshine, and now I look forward to some rumbles of thunder tonight, and then maybe again Friday.
I might even hear tomorrow morning maybe a peal or rumble of thunder. It's not very likely, but I'm not leaving it out of the equation for the tri-state area. Maybe one or two spots might see one or hear one, and then we'll get into some clearing tomorrow afternoon, Joe. And if we get enough sunshine, hey, just about everybody may break the 50-degree mark tomorrow,
or even higher in South Jersey and points south.
Yeah.
Welcome to everybody tonight on the chat board. And by the way, because I should have started this sooner when we went to broadband, but I had stopped uploading show as a podcast onto Spotify and all the other podcast outlets because I had a slow download speed, as I have to download the show and then upload the show. So being that it's National Podcast Month, you can listen to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on Spotify or any of your favorite podcast channels that you might use. So just want to remind everybody of that. We are starting the day off with almost 40 likes, because we always love to get to 100 likes. The sooner the better. So if you like the Joe and Joe Weather Show, hit the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is on Monday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m., Sundays at 11 a.m. And if there's an important storm underway, we will pop in on a Friday or a Saturday, which we haven't really had to do. I think we only did it once this winter for reasons other than snow. We just did a little rescheduling. So, Friday. Almost looks identical on the maps. It's just a little bit further to the north. It's about 50 or 60 miles further north with the primary and the secondary, and that means that trace line that was at Route 195 in New Jersey with the last event is probably going to be much further north this time around. So I don't think there's any danger. I don't think there's any danger of seeing a surprise. Well, not that the other day was a surprise, but I don't think there's any danger of seeing a significant snow this time around.
I said, off air to you that taking everything into account, and boy, I want to tell you, if you place your bets on the European, there ain't no chance of any kind of frozen precip. That is a very warm push of air that it is trying to move into our area. The GFS and the NAM are suggesting that we'll most definitely start with snow and sleet, but then even those two models are kind of pushing for a changeover, mainly north of 84. So what I said on my Facebook forecast tonight is that if you live anywhere north of Interstate 84 or along the 84 corridor, you might very well get a light accumulation. I'm thinking like an inch or two, maybe three. But anywhere south of that, it may get slick and slippery for a while on Friday evening, but it does not look, in my humble opinion, that we're going to be looking at anything that we'll have to shovel
Right.
or scrape
Well,
away or
well, well
whatever.
that's kind of what I did. Even if there were a coating to an inch or so south of 84 down to say 287, it's going to get washed away.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter from that respect. And then we go into after that the weekend and into next week. After the storm goes by, it looks pretty quiet and probably starting to get a little colder maybe down the road.
Well, one thing that struck me is for later next week, they have this monstrous, may I use that term, monstrous high pressure system dropping on down through Western Canada into the plain states and then literally just like oozing eastward toward us. And I took one look at that and I said, boy, that looks like we could be going progressively downhill beginning later next week on into maybe the middle part of the month. Maybe this is the cold air that we have been talking about and suggesting would be coming our way again for beginning later on next week.
Did you, by the way, happen to see the upper air of the European at 200 at day 10 at 240 hours?
I did not look at it.
Take a look at it.
I'm going to take a look at it now.
Take a look at that.
All right, hang on.
And I will show everybody when it's time, but I want to see if I get a reaction.
All right. I'll go to the eastern United States. I will go to upper dynamics. I'll go to 500 height anomaly. And then I will go to 240 and see what coming up. Come on, come on. And whoa.
I know. I did the same thing when I saw it. And then I laughed out loud because the GFS is totally different. I mean, totally different. But we'll keep the mystery going for a little while longer, and we'll bring it up again when we go do the maps. Shall we?
All right. Surely.
Surely, yes. Okay, let's take a look at what's going on watches and warnings wise tonight in the U.S. And of course, it's getting, it's really starting to get played out, but it's still there. Actually, in California, except for the mountains east of Los Angeles and to the north of San Diego, where they still have winter storm warnings up, they kind of, it's calmed down. However, if you look in Northern California and up into the southwest coast of Oregon, the winter storm watches are up because there's going to probably, there's at least two more storms that are going to be impacting the west and southwest in the next 10 or 12 days. I'm sure they're jumping for joy over the prospects that they could have two more major snowfalls coming on top of the 7 feet that they've gotten in the last 10 days or so. Winter storm warnings up throughout northern Arizona and also in southeast Arizona, which includes Tucson, Arizona, Tucson, a good chunk of western New Mexico, southwestern Colorado, southern Utah, and into Nevada. We've got some advisories up in the northwest with some warnings up in northwestern Washington state. Now, further east, the Dakota winter storm warnings are gone. We've got some leftover advisories in northern Michigan, some advisories in northwest Kansas. Flood watches are up from eastern Oklahoma into Tennessee and northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, and we have a working tornado watch underway from northeasternmost Texas and southeastern Oklahoma eastward across much of Arkansas and northern Mississippi. And in the Northeast, we've got winter weather advisories for tonight for interior Maine, parts of New Hampshire and Vermont, because we've got this little disturbance that's lifting up to the Northeast that Bill Goodman messaged me, Joe, and told me that he actually had sleet this afternoon when the precip went by his place on Long Island.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, I mentioned the possibility for maybe a spotty shower or two this evening, but I think the main push of moisture probably is going to wait until toward daybreak tomorrow morning. That's also when, if there's enough lift, if there's enough energy in the atmosphere, there might even be, as I said, an isolated rumble of thunder, or maybe even a flash or two of lightning. So you might be greeted tomorrow morning rudely, or you might be rudely awakened with a little bit of noise, maybe.
Correct. Okay, satellite loop tonight. A lot of lightning flashes there showing up in southern Indiana, over into western Kentucky, western Tennessee, back through Arkansas and into Oklahoma. Well, now they moved out of Oklahoma, so we do have an active area of showers and thunderstorms moving eastward there. That's where the Storm Prediction Center has risk tonight. We'll take a look at that in a second. A little bit to the west of that, in the southwest, if you look abouts in California, you can see the rotation of the clouds in that counterclockwise fashion, showing us that strong upper low that continues to drop southeastward, and that's going to swing east and then start lifting northeastward, which is going to be our weather maker here in the east for Friday. We've got clouds up in New England, and we've got some patchy clouds moving through across the south. So we could check out the latest radar and take a look here in Vermont, New Hampshire, and now moving into Maine. This is why they have the advisories up. And here's that rough weather that's going on tonight in parts of the Ohio Valley, back over into the upper part of the lower Mississippi Valley, or the lower part of the middle Mississippi Valley. Bunch of severe thunderstorm warnings are up at the moment. Looks like we've got 4 of them. One tornado warning that came and went there in Arkansas, in west central Arkansas, not too far from Little Rock, by the way, and flash flood warning there to the west of that tornado warning / severe thunderstorm warning. And we've got a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings going on now in parts of southeast Indiana. Some pretty hefty cells in there. Meanwhile, in Arizona, there's this big, large area of moisture. And even some what could be thunderstorms there in southern Arizona, in southwest Arizona. You see, it's like a little skinny line there that's moving through.
And on the chat board, Chuck Cardillo says that he was talking to his nephew who lives in Tucson, and he told me that they told Chuck.
Did they evacuate?
No, but they do expect up to 3 inches of snow there.
Yes.
This is for Tucson, Arizona now, folks.
Yep. It's the crazy winter that we're in. And here comes the next round of moisture up into Washington State in the Pacific Northwest. The surface map tonight is showing and approaching. They got a bunch of, I love they got, a bunch of lows and a bunch of fronts analyzed all over the place. They got a low in western New York, with a warm front that becomes a stationary front. Well, it almost looks like a backward stationary front in West Virginia. You see how they drew it backwards?
Well, it's a backdoor warm front,
I guess. And then, and then they got it as a warm front in northern North Carolina, then the stationary into a low that's in northeastern North Carolina, with another warm front that goes down to the south. I mean, they really, they really analyzed this very, very closely. And you see the winding front that goes from the southwest Buffalo low down into Arkansas and then back over into Texas. You got dew points, Joe. No wonder, we're getting severe weather. You got dew points in the mid 60s and that ob in Shreveport, 82 with a dew point of 72.
Ouch. And that's only for the 1st of March, folks.
Yeah.
Wait Wait till they get into June and July. Woo!
Yeah, our dew points have come up into the 60s here too. So temperatures at 4 p.m. In North Georgia were all in the mid to upper 70s. You had to go down in the southern third of the state where you start to get into the low 80s there. And I'm seeing 80s across southern Alabama, excuse me, into Mississippi and back into Louisiana.
So
Meanwhile,
does it feel a little muggy where you are as compared to recent days or
no, not
weeks?
really.
No.
I didn't think it did.
Oh, all right.
I was pretty comfortable today. It wasn't bad at all. Cold high building down from Canada there, 1024-ish high, and we're seeing temperatures that are teens and some single digits, and you have to go even up into, on the Canada side, temperatures are in the single digits and teens above zero. And then you head down to the southwest, you see all this energy with the low and the upper feature that goes with it, by the way. Looks like the low is centered somewhere northwest of Las Vegas. There's another one to the southeast of Las Vegas with a cold front that's pushed into Baja California. And on and on and on it goes. WPC, Joe, WPC has. So if you want to use you know how I love to use that 50% line. The 50% line for at least 2 inches to me is a good place if you're a forecaster to lay your 2-inch line where WPC's got 50%, and that's right at that's right into the northwest corner of New Jersey, north and east, right along Route 84 across Connecticut, and then you got it into northern Rhode Island, and then it curves up to just east of Boston in the ocean. Obviously, they're not going to accumulate snow in the ocean, but you see how it's all laid out here, folks. There's very little here once you go south of 84.
Yeah, as I said, it may begin as snow or sleet, even down as far south as, let's say, New York or the Bronx and parts of Long Island. But with the push of warmer air, and again, there has not been a single model that has been more vigorous with the push of warm air this week than the European. European just flat out says, forget about it. It's going to be rain. I really don't buy into that. I think we will have, in most areas, a little bit of frozen at the beginning, but it ain't going to stay frozen, not with this overall pattern. Southerly winds, we're looking for temperatures to be above freezing Friday night. If you're hoping for a repeat of what we had a couple of nights ago, where many areas picked up 4, 5, 6 inches, that's not going to be the story this time around. Sorry.
Looks like once again along the I-90 corridor east of Syracuse. Well, Syracuse is kind of in this. They're in the 80% for 2. But as you go east along the I-90 corridor and northward, those areas are probably going to do pretty well with this. Here's the probability of at least 8. And you see, if you want to use the 50% line for that, it's just north of I-90 in Massachusetts, and just north of I-90 on the New York State side. The probabilities are higher when you get 70% or higher in the Adirondacks, and also up in the mountains of central and northern New Hampshire and into western Maine. Meanwhile, let's go to the west, because we all know that's the only place it snows anymore. David Schwartz on the chat board says Huntington Lake, California, 144 inches of snow in 6 days, Joe.
Wow.
That's 20.
That's crazy.
What is that? 20. 21? No,
How much?
Wait, 144 divided by 6. So that's what, 24 inches a day? 24 inches a day?
Yeah.
My brain is fading and I can't do simple math anymore.
An inch an hour.
Pretty much. You know what? You're right. It's an inch an hour for 144 hours. That's crazy.
That'll do it.
Also, want to not leave out the folks in Michigan, because we have a few Michiganders that watch our show here on a nightly basis, and you see the probabilities there of 50% or higher. Detroit is in it, in that zone. So those areas in there and up to the north and the middle and upper part of the lower peninsula could do fairly well, at least getting some snow. And then out we go to the west, where it's just an absolute sea of color here. You see all the areas, the whole, 3/4 of the state of Arizona is at 50% or higher. Pretty much all of western New Mexico, southern Colorado, kind of tails off a little bit in Utah, and then you've got the Sierra Nevadas, more to the north, the coastal ranges of California and Oregon, and also the Cascades. Pretty high probability there for at least two. And on the snow forecast map now, some of this, the big amounts that have occurred out there, obviously they've put a ton of it down. So this is going forward with once this system that's out there now pulls out. So that's why these numbers that you see here are not really all that impressive relative to what we've been showing. A couple of places in the Sierras get an additional foot. A few additional inches in the mountains into the east of LA, and then in Arizona as well. You still have an 18 print for Flagstaff. You see where the heavy snow is going on there, and then you got these 1 and 2 inch numbers going into southeastern Arizona, including Tucson. And by the way, this carries us through Saturday, the 4th of March. Meanwhile, we'll go into the east. This goes through Saturday evening. So now in the east, what do we got? Around Michigan, 5 to 6 inches being forecast. Looks like Detroit is on the 1 to 2 inch zone here. Lansing 5, Grand Rapids 1 to 3, interior along I-75 getting 4 to 6 in the middle. And here we go for the Northeast. These are the Weather Service digital forecast numbers. 9 for Albany, 10 for Concord, 8 for is it 8 or 5 or 6 for Montpelier? All right, I'll solve this problem. 6 to 8 for Montpelier. 8 for Syracuse, 7 for Rochester, 5 for Buffalo, and then up 10 inches or more in these clusters west of the Northway in upstate New York and north of I-90, and also on the east side of the state. I'm sorry, and then go on into the Vermont side, and continuing through central and northern New Hampshire and over into western Maine. You can see where the Weather Service has got the southern flank, Joe, right along the Connecticut coast.
Right.
To about the Bronx-Westchester line, and then cutting across New Jersey on a diagonal to cover the northwest counties. Maybe a couple inches more in northeastern PA, maybe a few inches more than that up in the Catskills. But really, the heavy stuff is going to be, I think I-90 north. You're locked in once again.
Right. I'm gonna step out for a couple of minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay, and as I'll
explain why, and I'll explain why when I get back.
All right. So in the meantime, I'm going to just kind of set up what's going on here with respect to the upper air going forward, because there's a couple of important differences in the models in the over the next 10 days between the GFS and the European. So I'm going to do the European first, and we will start with. Let's go to the 12Z. And so what is happening here, so I've actually moved this to Friday morning, early Friday morning. And we have this developing block that is building across Iceland to Greenland. And that is, of course, suppressing the jet to the south. And here's our vigorous upper low that by early Friday morning is going to be somewhere to the west of Dallas-Fort Worth. We've got a little bit of ridging here in the southeast, not a lot, but there's a little bit of ridging, and then you have that Canadian jet that just kind of rolls along there just to our north that's going to bring colder air and set up those areas up to the north, but not going to be doing anything of consequence in bringing down that colder air further south like we saw in this last case. But just rolling this along on the European. So our upper feature swings across Ohio into western New York. That brings our storm. You get the primary storm that goes up to our west. The secondary is going to form right off the New Jersey, Long Island coast, which is too far north. You needed it to be like it was the other day where it formed off the Delaware coast. That's ideal. Anyway, that goes out, but you could see the block, that big purple area up over Greenland. The block gets into position there, and you also see that low that's sitting southeast of Newfoundland, almost in that 50-50 low position, and it kind of sits there for a few days, more than a few days, and then by the time we get to the end of the forecast period, we have this deep system that's in the west that comes down and carves out a really impressive looking trough into Texas. And if we look at the surface map that goes with this, and I'll get a little closer here on the U.S. view, this is actually a fairly dynamic looking upper air. The blocking high in eastern Canada and points northward. You get that big surface high that's going to be spreading out across Canada and into the U.S., and that includes the east. This upper air is one that you would look at and say this has potential for something to happen. And in fact, when we look at the surface, and remember, are you back?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. I'm just showing them the European from today. If you look at the surface now, this map does not show precipitation type. It just shows how much precipitation amounts, and therefore you can't really make too many conclusions regarding who's got rain or snow, other than the fact that if you look at the 540 thickness line, the blue line that goes down into East Texas, this would the European would be indicating that there would be a fairly substantial snowstorm for much of eastern Texas and north central Texas as well. And there's a 997 low there in New Orleans, and the big high is way up. It's way up north of Lake Winnipeg. Probably, I don't even see what the pressure on this thing was. Let's go to the North America view. That'll see it doesn't even print the H. I can't. You know what? I can't even read the isobars, so I'll have to just kind of guess.
I left my monocle in the glove compartment of my car, so I cannot help you with this.
Let's see, 24, right, 30, 32, 34. So at least there's a 38 isobar in the picture, and there's more isobars further north than that. So this is a big cold high. Right. Very impressive upper air and surface, Joe. Blocking the whole 9 yards. Everything looks like it would be in place. And then I looked at the GFS for the same time frame, and of course, what does that do? It's got a low wrapping up in Kansas, and if you look at the way the isobars are pointed, they're pointed up toward the western Great Lakes, and the reason for that is that when we look at the upper air on the GFS has decided that instead of showing you what the European, look at this big ridge and the trough. It drops the trough off the west coast for the same time frame. It's a totally different world here. Okay, yes. Totally different world. And on the wider view, I'll show you what's up in Canada. It's block E, but nowhere near what the European has. So the GFS says the block which is there suddenly just here it is at 168. So this is 7 days from now. By the time you get to day 10, it's gone. Okay, it's just it's weakened quite a bit, and that allows the ridge to just fly right up the east coast. And then, of course, again, it drops the trough back into the western part of the United States. The odd thing is, though, as you go forward, is that it starts to bring that colder look right back. So the GFS is notorious for building blocks when they're not there, and it's also notorious for ripping blocks down when they are. So and obviously the European has been, a mess the whole winter, trying to do all sorts of weird things at least every other day. So what this outcome is going to be in the longer term is going to depend on which model is correct on this block.
It's like the European has been saying all winter long, "Hey, Rocky, watch me
pull a rabbit out of my hat." Yes.
Oh, but now, Joe, now,
Now,
Go to the Canadian model and see what the Canadian cooks up for 240 hours.
oh, I saw that. I saw
You'll
that.
love it.
Well, let's see. The Canadian upper air. Yeah, I mean the Canadian upper air is also it's different completely from the other two
Yes.
because it slides this upper low out of the Dakotas and then explodes it right off the East Coast. Yeah, I saw that. It's got a 958 low just east of the
Yeah.
benchmark.
Yeah.
But it
Wouldn't you
doesn't
love it?
it doesn't it doesn't show a lot of snow though.
No.
It really doesn't. It's got just a little bit of light blue there right along the immediate coast. It's got this
We're
really
on the
wrapped up animal well to the southeast of Cape Cod.
we're on the dry side.
Right. On the other hand, though, you will notice, Joe, that there's light blue snow all down the Appalachians into the southern Appalachians, almost to my house on the
Right.
Canadian. So,
Right. Orographic lifting.
correct. None of these, none of these models seem to have a clue going forward. And actually, when you get into a situation, whenever the NAO goes negative, we haven't checked because we haven't had any reason to. Let me bring up the NAO chart just for laughs.
Tom Contino last night was like begging for the NAO. Well, we just didn't have the chance to look for it, or didn't have enough time. But anyway, for all of you NAO, all you NAO fans, get ready.
The NAO is the North Atlantic Oscillation. For those of you who,
or as Popeye likes to say, the North American Osculation.
Right. So actually, Joe, we are negative right now by 1 standard deviation, and usually if you're going to get big storms, the NAO, you want to see the NAO go from being negative, and rise up to the neutral line. It's that change from negative to neutral that you usually have some kind of storm form, and it does do that. I thought it would be much lower. I thought you'd have be down in a -2, -3 range, but it's only at -1. But it does from there go up to the neutral line, maybe around day 10 or 11. So there is a bit of a signal here of something happening. And while we have this up, and again, this is the GFS. So if we had the European one,
yeah, right,
we probably would have a much different look. And the PNA, which seems to be doing nothing all year, the Pacific North America Index, which was neutral through most of the month of February and is now negative and is forecast to stay negative, maybe come up a little bit closer to the neutral line by the time we get to the middle of the month. So the teleconnections aren't really that bullish.
Yes.
They're not.
Are you there? Oh, yeah. Okay. You're right. But beggars can't be choosers. We'll take any slight deviation over what we have been dealing with for the past 3 months, which, by the way, the past 3 months were meteorological winter. And as you pointed out at the beginning of tonight's show, Joe, we are now officially in meteorological spring.
That's correct. Yes. All right, let's check out. Oh, well, since I didn't do it before, I'll do that, and then we'll come back to the GFS surface here. SPC, the Storm Prediction Center. So there you have it. We've got a working tornado watch, as we pointed out earlier, and the Storm Prediction Center has for tonight. You see that enhanced risk of severe weather across Arkansas into Oklahoma, into Mississippi and northern Mississippi and southwest Tennessee. Slight risk extends further east. I'm in a marginal risk from now until tomorrow morning. Then for tomorrow, we have a moderate risk, by the way. And that moderate risk is... Oh, Mike Whiteley is on. Mike, thank you for hitting Super Chat. And I have to ask you, okay? First of all, thank you also for subscribing to my my subscription site on Patreon. I appreciate your support. But I have to ask you, because I saw your comment the other day before the snow started that you had taken all the plows down. Okay.
Well, he answers that on the chat board.
Oh, he did?
He answered that. He says, what's happening, Joe? I watched your replay from last night's show, and I didn't take the equipment off the truck. I actually got 14 hours of plowing and sanding in with the town of Huntington.
Awesome. That's terrific. Okay, good. See,
So there
Joe.
you go.
See, Joe. We do goodness. We spread
Yeah.
goodness as best we can.
Whatever you say, boss.
15% tornado risk tomorrow in northeast Texas, northwest Louisiana, and southwestern Arkansas, and an even bigger area of 10% risk that extends all the way into northwest Mississippi. So it's going to be a busy night of severe weather for tomorrow. And then on day 3, we've got this large area of slight risk in the southeastern states, and going back all the way up into Kentucky and through much of Tennessee and back into Alabama. I wouldn't be surprised if we wind up seeing an enhanced risk added to this.
Yes, it certainly. Now, I noticed, Joe, and especially if there is an enhanced risk added to this, that would place you right in the bullseye, wouldn't it?
Oh, it could very well, yes. I'm thinking that, given the dynamics of what's going on, particularly if the GFS, which seems to be the deeper of all the models, if that winds up being closer to reality, there probably will be a fairly robust severe weather event in the southeast.
Well, we'll be watching it on Friday, and maybe I'll send you a couple of texts and just say, ask how you doing over there. How's JJ?
Oh, yeah, he's actually in here in my bedroom. He's laying down by the bed asleep. He always does this. It's his political commentary on the show, I guess. I don't know. Leon Probitsky and Richard Melikar hitting Super Chat tonight. Thank you to both of you for doing that. And we're at 98 likes. So we just need 2 more to get to the magic 100, which, as we all know, how happy it makes us feel. So here's what's going on from the model surface. And tonight's system moving eastward there. Yeah, I could see it tonight, Joe. It probably could be a rumble of thunder for somebody. Some heavier rains moving across me and Tennessee and through the Carolinas and Virginia. You see that snow up in Maine and New Hampshire. That low goes out. We got this cold high, or quote-unquote cold, because it's not really all that cold of a high, moving straight east to James Bay. The next low's coming out, and there it is in Arkansas. You see the GFS even showing the idea of a squall line there, moving through Tennessee and Mississippi tomorrow. The primary low goes to Louisville. This is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon Friday. You see the model generates light blue snow in Pennsylvania, central and eastern Pennsylvania, and into northwest New Jersey, into northern New Jersey. Rain central and South Jersey southward. And the primary is going to go into Ohio. The secondary starts to develop right over Delaware. And, the big question to me here is just, inland of the coast north of 84, does it go to sleet and then just end as maybe a little bit of rain? Or does the secondary take over fast enough where you get a change back to snow, say, in interior Connecticut, and maybe down in the Hudson Valley down to Route 84. I think that's a question in my mind. This also looks, you can see where all the dark blue snows are. And Boston might be in one of those places where, could be a little bit of a jackpot zone if the secondary really cranks up.
Right. And once again, it's the game of splits and blocks. It's the game of how quickly will the secondary form, if it forms at all. All of these things, and I think about the forecasters from 50 years or later or earlier, or beyond 50 years, who didn't have the access to what we have, computer models, and at least being able to try to anticipate a possible secondary formation. That's probably why there were so many busts back in the day when they were trying to forecast snowfalls. And they said, oh, darn it, look, we've got a secondary. Now we have to up the accumulations or whatever.
Right.
So we'll see. Boston, we shall look upon you and see what all takes place as we get toward the end of this week.
What's left of the primary kind of slides southeastward Saturday night with a little area of snow in upstate New York into Pennsylvania that just basically dries out. And meanwhile, in the west, there's a front that's moving in on Saturday, and you see it does produce some snows in Northern California and into the Sierra Nevadas. Then there's another low that comes in Sunday morning with another surge of moisture, and that just kind of plays through into early Monday morning. That is going to be followed by a storm that is going to move straight east. You can see it now on the lower left coming in into Southern California. The model's been showing this for many days now, and it's still showing it. Nice tight little wrapped up low there that comes crashing toward Los Angeles, and then you got another round of heavy rains and heavy snows here. This would be for the end of next week, if that's correct. And meanwhile, in the east, next week looks pretty quiet. I mean, there's a little system that on Tuesday that has a couple of showers, a cold front that's coming through, and it's behind that we start to see that big high that starts to spread out across central and eastern Canada and across the plains, the Great Lakes, and Northeast. And then, as I said, when you match it up with the European, which is totally different, the GFS takes that California storm, which the European takes straight east and redevelops it in the Gulf. The GFS takes it up into Colorado and Kansas and then heads it right up into the Great Lakes. The ridge pops up again in the east. Cold air goes away. We warm up in rain. And then the cold air comes back, only to have another low. Now, this one it actually tries to take up, but what does it do, Joe? It takes it up the west side of the Appalachians.
Right.
Around mid-month. And then that goes out. So, I don't know.
And you know what? We're going to get the perfect setup for a big snowfall come maybe the third week of April. But by that time, the temperatures will just be just a tad too warm. And instead, we'll just have a heavy, chilly or cold rain.
33 and rain with gloppy flakes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it'll be. And so, the elevated areas will wind up doing well if that little fantasy you just created winds up being true. So, do you have Briller Jeopardy tonight?
Yes, I do.
You do? Okay.
I do. And you had your rant last night. Okay, so
I did. I ranted.
Have to do that. Scott Briller. There we go. On this Briller Jeopardy, we are going to look at the records of a city Mr. Cioffi lived in, New Orleans. This New Orleans.
It's New Orleans.
Maybe I should stick around for the Matty Grass.
It is not New Orleans. It's New Orleans, Joe.
I'm doing my Bugs Bunny.
Okay.
You remember with the top-hatted penguin?
Yes.
There goes the old Admiral Byrd bound for Brooklyn. Brooklyn.
All right. So the first city is New Orleans, and what are we doing?
It is the only city. It is the only
city.
We're going to look at the records of the city that you lived in for a time. Starting with number 1, the highest temperature ever recorded in the city of New Orleans.
I will say, now my memory is so bad because 100-degree temperatures are extremely rare there, if at all.
Right.
So I'll say 100.
Pretty good.
I'll say 100.
But Jason Barry got it right.
101?
On the nose. 101 degrees.
I was in my head, I was tossing either 100 or 101, so I obviously went the wrong way. Okay. 101.
A silly millimeter longer.
New Jersey, 101.5.
Yes. Number 2, well, we did the highest temperature. How about the lowest temperature ever recorded?
Now, I was there in 1983 when it got down to 7. Okay, and I don't remember if that was this was late in late December. It got down to 7 above, and it put such a strain on the electrical system that it was it was horrible.
Well, Adam Lowe did you one better and got it right on the nose.
6
degrees in 18 99.
Okay, so I would have said 7 and then maybe subtracted down, but yes, okay, 6. Very good.
Very good. How about what is the? Oh, we only have 3 questions tonight. All right. Well, this is the third and last question of the night. What was New Orleans' biggest snowfall in inches? Although, if you want to do it in centimeters, you could
I
do that
used to
too.
remember this too. I'll say because it happened, it I don't know if it happened in the last 20 years because it has snowed there a few times in the last 20 or so years there. I'm gonna say 6.
Okay, that's a pretty good guess. Steve Lapointe, though, came even closer. He said 8.
Okay.
Adam Lowe said 8. I will say this: we're breaking this down into fractions of an
Well,
inch.
Helen Bertona just said 7.
Right, but
Okay.
that's not enough.
Okay. So they
Michael
said
Azaria said
8.
8.
So then I'm thinking what? 9?
Well, as I said, we're doing it in decimals here.
Oh,
8 is pretty damn close.
8.3.
That's even closer, Joe.
All right, so it's either 8.4 or 8.2.
Right.
8.2.
Ding, ding, ding.
Finally, I got one after missing them by 1 the other times.
Valentine's
8.2.
Valentine's Day, February 14th into the 15th, 1895, 8.2 inches.
Nice. All right. Well, I guess we will say nighty night. There's not much else to talk about tonight, so we'll be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on my YouTube channel. 122 likes. Thank you so much for those of you who have hit the like button tonight, and super chat. Thank you for all the super chat hits tonight. Always appreciated here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We get to eat a meal for another day. And on that note, we'll say good night and we'll see you tomorrow. Night, everybody.
Good night.